Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @symbol CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION @symbol CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 12th of March 2025. From the news section. Edinburgh Fringe gets funding boost to safeguard festival. This article has been written by Mark McDougall, and it's being read by me, Corey. The Edinburgh Festive Fringe Society will receive new funding worth £300,000 over the next year. The funding has been announced by Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes to support the world's largest performing arts festival. The festival, which runs in August each year, has a significant impact on the economy in Scotland, and it's hoped this money can help improve that. It will enable work in two areas agreed between the Scottish Government and the Fringe Society. It is to develop the capabilities of the data and digital infrastructure and make it more accessible for artists, audiences and venues, as well as working to explore how the government and the society can help Scottish artists capitalise on international opportunities. That will be done by targeting priority countries and regions, and Ms Forbes believes it is vital to support a festival which has a huge role in Scotland's society and culture. She said, "The Fringe is one of Scotland's signature events. From humble beginnings in 1947, it has grown to become the world's largest performing arts festival, making it a significant economic contributor to Edinburgh and Scotland as a whole." This agreement recognises firstly that the Fringe Society does not neatly fit into the funding streams available to other culture organisations. Secondly, that there is ample opportunity for the Fringe Society to work more closely with all the other organisations who play an important role in making the Fringe the annual success that it is. The Scottish Government is committed to working with the Fringe Society and all partners who deliver. It will help safeguard the future for Edinburgh Fringe as a world-leading cultural asset, built on the principle of free access for all. Shona McCarthy, Chief Executive of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society, said, "We welcome this new funding and thank the Scottish Government for recognising the unique position that the Fringe Society has. This will undoubtedly contribute greatly to Scotland's economy, society and culture sector, and we hope that this is a first step towards long-term funding for the Fringe Society. It is vital that the Fringe Society can continue to provide much-needed core services to the thousands of artists who come to the festival every year, and who recognise it as a global marketplace and expo. A sustainable Fringe Society can use its convening role to unlock support for the wider Fringe from the imminent visitor levy. We look forward to working with Kate Forbes and the Scottish Government on developing a long-term sustainable funding model, and welcome this investment into both digital infrastructure and international opportunities." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Mark McDougall, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 12th of March 2025. From the news section. Green heating plans scrapped over fuel poverty concerns. This article has been written by Mark McDougall, and it's being read by me, Corey. A bill that would make homeowners switch to greener heating soon after buying a new home has been scrapped by the Scottish Government. The acting Net Zero Secretary, Gillian Martin, told MSPs the draft Heat and Buildings Bill would no longer be put forward to Parliament because it would make people poorer. The bill was drafted by Scottish Green co-leader Patrick Harvie as part of the Butte House Agreement, but Miss Martin says she could not introduce it until she was happy it would decrease fuel poverty as well as decarbonise housing. Mr Harvie believes it is a decision that contradicts the government's plans on climate. The legislation would have required gas boilers to be replaced with alternatives within a set time frame after the sale of a property. Heating homes is responsible for 18.5% of Scotland's greenhouse gas emissions. Miss Martin said, "I'm going to introduce a Heat and Buildings Bill when I can be satisfied that those interventions within it will decrease fuel poverty at the same time as decarbonising houses. I'm going to craft a bill that is going to simultaneously reduce carbon and tackle fuel poverty. And until I can do that, I'm afraid there will not be a bill put forward in its current drafted form because at the moment it will make people poorer." Mr Harvie said, "This is yet another example of the SNP's climate delays, which have grown more and more worrying over the last year. It will also delay the huge benefit households need to see from ending their reliance on fossil fuels and their volatile prices." That article is from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Mark McDougall, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 12th of March 2025. From the news section. 2 arrests made after women sexually assaulted in Clydebank car park. This article has been written by Mark McDougall, and it's being read by me, Corey. 2 men are to appear in court after being arrested and charged in connection with the sexual assault of a woman in Clydebank last week. The men, aged 35 and 37, were arrested after an incident which took place in the car park beside the Crescent Dalmuir around 8:20 p.m. on Saturday, March 8th. The pair are due to appear at the Dumbarton Sheriff Court today with a report sent to the Procurator Fiscal. Detective Inspector Craig Bates said, "I'd like to thank everyone who has come forward with information to assist our inquiries. I would like to reassure the community that additional patrols are being carried out, and I would encourage anyone with concerns to speak to officers." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Mark McDougall, and it was read by me, Corey.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 12th of March 2025 from the Voices section. Starmer attack on society's poorest leaves Scottish Labour in trouble. This article is by Alison Rowett. The Battle of the Closed Blinds. Ah, yes, I remember it well. It was 2012. Austerity was tightening its jaws, and a fresh-faced young Chancellor named George Osborne was about to set out his view on the benefit system. Addressing his party's conference, Mr. Osborne asked delegates, "Where is the fairness, we ask, for the shift worker, leaving home in the dark hours of the early morning, who looks up at the closed blinds of their next-door neighbour sleeping off a life on benefits?" It would have been a rum thing for anyone to say, far less the son of a fabric and furnishings dynasty who had enjoyed every privilege in life and would go on to relish many more. I did not think anyone could or would want to beat it for sheer knuckle-headedness. But step forward Sir Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Liz Kendall, and an assorted band of useful idiots from within Labour, who are on a mission to stop disabled people bleeding the state dry when they could be working. Not that Miss Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, will put it that way when she sets out her plans. The furthest she has gone so far is saying some people are taking the mickey and claiming benefits when they could be working. Her boss was a little bolder when addressing Labour MPs on Monday night, telling them that sickness benefits were costing a fortune, £70 billion a year by 2030. But the system wasn't working. It was a worst of all worlds situation that could be ignored no longer. We can't just shrug our shoulders and look away, said the Prime Minister. We can't just tinker around the edges. We won't try and sow division or create distractions. We'll roll up our sleeves, take responsibility and make the reforms needed to fix what is broken. So here we go again. Keir the builder, Bob's not-so-cheery colleague, is in the House again, getting ready to fix stuff. It was not that long ago that Keir the builder fixed the winter heating allowance for pensioners. Now his Chancellor wants £6 billion off the benefits bill. Not that she wants to be nasty either. It's just terribly unfortunate that events, COVID, rising interest rates, soaring debt payments, Ukraine, you name it, have reduced the amount she has to spend. But benefits reform would be the right thing to do in any case, Labour argues, because being in work is better for you than languishing on the dole. One should strive to be an open, blind kind of person, not a closed one. Or, as Pat McFadden, the Cabinet Office Minister, put it this week, we are the Labour Party. The clue is in the name. What is wrong with that, you might wonder? It is better for people to work if they can. Nothing transforms a family's fortunes quicker than a good wage coming in every month. But the key phrase here is, if they can. Though Labour ministers talk a good game in softly tones, they must believe that a sizable chunk of the 9.3 million economically inactive people in the UK are, to use a non-medical term, at it. Otherwise, why come after them? Though the government's plans are still to be revealed, disability benefits are thought to be among those on the table. Any talk of cutting disability benefits makes life harder for people already having a tough time of it. Every MP and MSP should know this from their postbag and email inbox. The Prime Minister, who has spoken movingly in the past of caring for his disabled mother, knows better than most the strain individuals and families can be under due to the extra costs that come with disability. At the moment, some of these costs are provided for by personal independence payments, PIPs, or adult disability payments, ADPs, in Scotland. Options for the government could include means testing or more rigorous assessment to restrict eligibility. In short, back to the bad old days. PIPs were brought in under the Welfare Reform Act of 2012, the same year George Osborne made his open and closed blinds speech. For all the teething troubles and continuing flaws, the payments have boosted many disabled people's independence and dignity. Plus, and here's a funny thing, they have kept people in work and paying taxes. Yet these benefits are what a Labour government might come after. Not for the first time, Starmer comes across as someone who has wandered into the wrong party by accident, who knows nothing of its history and naff all about what makes it tick. There has been a tension in the past among Labour members over welfare benefits. Witness Bevan resigning over Attlee's introduction of prescription charges, in part to help pay for rising defence costs. Sound familiar? But this attack on welfare, coming so soon after axing the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners and cutting the international aid budget, is beyond the pale. As for those Labour MPs, 5 of them from constituencies in Scotland, who have joined a group to back the Prime Minister's reforms, shame on you lot too. The Get Britain Working Group, they call themselves, a name that's nearly as tone-deaf as Gordon Brown's use of the slogan, British jobs for British workers. If benefits reform had been Labour's plan all along, it should have been in the manifesto. Instead, this is another scribbled, ill-thought-out attempt to claw money from the poorest and weakest. The government either can't or won't come up with a better idea. What they will end up with, to quote Starmer, is the worst of all worlds. The money raised won't be enough to fill the hole in the public finances, and along the way a lot of lives will be diminished or ruined. What does Anas Sarwar, the leader of the Scottish Labour, think of the policy he will have to defend from now till the Scottish Parliament election comes around? Happy with it, Mr. Sarwar? Not for the first time, the man who would be First Minister is having trouble finding his voice. That article is by Alison Rowett.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 13th of March 2025, from the sports section. Unai Emery proud as Aston Villa progress in Champions League. This article is unattributed. Aston Villa boss Unai Emery is excited to go toe-to-toe with the best clubs in Europe after his side booked a Champions League quarter-final against Paris Saint-Germain. Villa continued their dream debut season in the Premier European Cup competition after completing a 6-1 aggregate win over Club Brugge in the last 16. They won the second leg 3-0 at Villa Park thanks to 3 goals in 11 second half minutes, with Marco Asensio grabbing a brace and Ian Maatsen adding another against the Belgian side who were reduced to 10 men in the 17th minute. A 2-legged tie with Liverpool's Conquerors awaits next month, which will be a first return to the Parc de France for former PSG boss Emery, while Asensio will be able to face his parent club, having joined Villa from the League One side on loan in January. But for now, Villa can bask in the glory of another famous European night in front of the watching Prince William, who jovially beamed, "See you in Paris" after the game. Emery said, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, Arsenal, Borussia Dortmund. This is the level we are in, this level. We have to be proud. We want more. We want to compete against the best teams in the world. We are one of the last 8 and our priority is to try to be as close to the level we are facing. Of course, to play quarter-finals is fantastic. We're very motivated against everything we were expected to play. They show great capacity against Liverpool, the best team in the Premier League, and it's been a very huge challenge for Aston Villa, for the supporters and players, and coaches, and me as well. To play against PSG is special because I didn't go back since I left, either playing or visiting Paris. It will be fantastic. The French champions showcased their potential to finally get their hands on the Champions League by beating Liverpool over 2 legs. Emery knows the size of the job in the next round. He added, I know the potential they have. Now they're going to be excited and very motivated in the Champions League. They performed very well. They completed 2 matches fantastic. We will try as best as possible to prepare for the match. It's very important to be in the Champions League, and to play against PSG is something we have to be proud of. And the author of that article was unattributed, and it was read by me, Ian McKenna.
The Herald on the 14th of March and the Voices section. Could GB Energy be a game changer for construction and real estate? By Lisa Dromgoole. GB Energy's announcement last July was generally met with enthusiasm, or at the very least interest. The notion of having a company dedicated to making the UK a clean energy superpower, their words, brought a renewed drive from businesses to consider how they could ride this journey of change. For Scotland, it was seen as a major opportunity for the private sector to invest in wind, solar and nuclear energy projects. Fast forward 6 months and the move continues to underscore the country's reputation as a renewable energy hub and promises to signify boost various industries, including construction and real estate. We carried out research into the attitudes of Scottish business leaders around GB Energy. The responses revealed an overwhelming positivity, with 81% confident that the creation of GB Energy will deliver a positive economic impact. This is a clear indication of business positivity around Scotland's potential to grow its renewable energy sector and the potential of the renewable energy sector to drive future economic prosperity. So what does the creation of GB Energy mean specifically for the construction and real estate sectors? Our research showed 2/3, 66% of business leaders believe that its presence will drive investment in these industries. But what is the rationale behind such optimism? The construction industry expects to see an increase in opportunities related to renewable energy projects. The expansion of onshore and offshore wind farms will require significant construction efforts, providing a steady stream of projects for local firms. There will be increased demand for sustainable infrastructure, aligning well with Scotland's goal of achieving net zero by 2045. GB Energy's presence is also expected to bolster the construction and real estate workforce. It's anticipated that this growth will be supported by relevant skills development initiatives, ensuring that the workforce is fully equipped to meet the demands of an evolving industry. This will lead to higher demand for real estate in key areas, including housing developments, industrial and commercial properties. Funding has been provided to speed up the delivery of a skills passport to support oil and gas workers transitioning to the offshore wind sector. The pilot for this digital tool for offshore energy workers was launched last month as part of the effort to ensure Scotland remains at the cutting edge of technologies. A contract to develop partnerships with Scottish public bodies in the clean energy sector, including Crown Estate Scotland, the enterprise agencies and the Scottish National Investment Bank, has been signed by both the Scottish and UK governments. These collaborations aim to deliver projects quickly and effectively, avoid duplication and maximise the impact and value for money from Scottish projects. There's no denying that the clean energy transition presents a huge opportunity for Scotland, and with existing framework in GB Energy, should be well positioned to help accelerate the development of key supply chains and infrastructure. The beneficial ripple effects should be felt across the country. The construction and real estate sectors stand to gain immensely, with increased opportunities, workforce growth, and enhanced property values. As Scotland continues to position itself as a leader in renewable energy, the future looks bright indeed. And that was by Lisa Dromgoole. The Herald on the 14th of March, Herald Diary by Lorne Jackson. Farewell, Nicola. Scotland finally has independence of a sort. Freedom fighters farewell. It's with feelings of pain mixed with gratitude that the diary tries to process the news that our nation's former glorious leader has announced she will swing her broadsword in battle no more. In more prosaic language, Nicola Sturgeon is standing down from Holyrood at the next election. Rather than mourn her departure, the diary prefers to celebrate her many great achievements in office, such as the time she expanded Scotland's territory by conquering Bavaria, Saxony and North Spain, allowing her to rule over large swathes of Europe. No, sorry, that was Charlemagne, King of the Franks. Though we're sure Sturgeon did oodles of important stuff too. Unfortunately, we can't recollect them at the moment. Meanwhile, diary correspondent John Mulholland is thrilled upon hearing Nick's news and says remarkably, what this means is that without a referendum in Scotland, we finally achieve independence from Nicola Sturgeon. Mash and bash, fighting talk from Peter Wright from West Kilbride. Visiting the co-op, he bumped into the owner of the local boozer. Both chaps were studying a boxed meal labelled beer battered chips. Realising the publican was an expert on such matters, Peter asked how you batter chips with beer. He also demanded to know if it's ethical to take your anger out on a humble potato, and does it inflict much pain. The publican pondered Peter's pertinent points before admitting that he'd have to get back to him with the relevant answers at a much, much later date. Rock Band Sucks. The Diary is making better use of famous musicians by turning them into handy implements to use around the house. Phil Graham from Knightswood said the Hoover should quickly sweep up, though it would be exceedingly noisy while doing so. Sail Fail, a disappointing tale of underachievement. Reader John Munro says, I was going to sail around the globe in the world's smallest boat, then I bottled it. Food for thought. The other afternoon, Bruce Harvey was waiting to be served at a cafe when the chap in front ordered a snack displayed on the counter. That's not a biscuit, said the barrister, it's a dog chew. Maybe I'll get one anyway, replied the customer, who didn't have a pooch. I've always been suspicious that dogs get better treats than we do. In the pink, politically motivated Jeanette Fletcher has an important announcement. Today, she says, I'll be wearing pink to raise awareness for people like me who forget to separate their red laundry from their whites. And that was by Lorne Jackson.
From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 15th of March 2025, from the news section. Further education stewards quit Unison for GMB over dispute. Report by Jodie Harrison. A group of union officials representing further education staff have walked out on Unison to join the GMB. Around 35 Unison stewards who are in dispute with Unison say they have been left with no choice but to switch allegiance after the branch was put into regional supervision. The officials say that the move will leave Unison with only a handful of experienced stewards operating in the further education sector in Scotland. Unison represents thousands of workers in Scotland's colleges, including admin staff, librarians, student support workers, technicians and cleaners. It recently accepted a pay offer that ended nearly 2 years of industrial action. The row between officials began last November when members were told that the further education branch was to be run exclusively by regional staff, meaning that existing branch officers are no longer in post. A team of 4 staff, led by a Unison regional organiser, took over, with a remit to ensure that all members receive appropriate support from their union and work with branch activists to restore the branch to full functionality as soon as possible. The group leaving the union say that they were still awaiting investigation meetings, which never materialised. A statement from the departing group said, 4 months have elapsed and, despite our best efforts, only one informal meeting has taken place to try and explore options to find a resolution. Despite repeated requests for a copy of the report used to secure the suspension of this branch, it has not been made available. The branch complaints against the region submitted between June and September 2024 remain unanswered, in breach of Unison's own rules and any standard of common decency. It added, the vast majority of branch activists have been on strike against their own trade union for the last 4 months. Striking stewards cannot afford to remain inactive while corporate Unison undermines all the collective gains made for college support staff over the last few years. Positive and member-led, not employer-led, change is now needed urgently. It is for those reasons that your branch officers, negotiators, stewards and activists have taken the monumentous decision to resign from Unison today and join the GMB en masse. Unison were contacted but declined to comment. An article was written by Jodie Harrison and read by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 15th of March 2025, from the Voices section. Moa Reynolds, here's something you might not know about Irish whisky brands. As St Patrick's Day approaches, my thoughts have turned to the Irish whisky scene and how it's developing. The regulations around making whisky in Ireland differ from those in Scotland, including key factors like the frequent use of triple distillation in Ireland instead of double distillation, and also being allowed to use different wood types, not just oak, which is the case for Scotch. Most of the whisky you will try from Ireland comes from Middleton Distillery in County Cork and Bushmills Distillery located near the north coast of Northern Ireland. These two were the only surviving distilleries after the decline of Irish whisky in the 20th century, which means a lot of the well-known brands you might have already tried would come from one of these two, even though the distillery name is not always on the front label. Nowadays, we seem to be experiencing a renaissance of Irish whisky, with the addition of a few new distilleries popping up all over the island in the last 10 years. These distilleries tend to sell Poitin, vodka or gin at first before their whisky is ready to be bottled after a minimum of 3 years, but many also sell whisky that has been bought from other distilleries that already have aged stock. I have sometimes found this a little confusing, as it is not always clear that the whisky is bought in rather than produced in-house. I have nothing against this kind of independent bottling, but I much prefer seeing transparency around it. Many newer distilleries in both Ireland and Scotland do bottle whisky sourced elsewhere that is representative of the flavour profile or character they are focusing on as a taste of what's to come before their own spirit is ready. There are, of course, also independent bottlers in Ireland that do not have a distillery, but focus on the maturation and bottling of the cask that they own. Two Stacks Whisky are cask bonders and independent bottlers that bottle both blended and various types of whisky. They also make their own cream liqueur and utilise unusual casks such as egg fruit or berry brandy casks for some of their whiskies. On my visit to Belfast in 2023, I also discovered their excellent innovation Dram in a Can, which is a little can containing 100ml of whisky. This type of packaging for smaller samples is lighter and easier to pack than small glass bottles. It also makes for a fun gift. I'd love to see more of this in the future. I definitely have more to talk about when it comes to Irish whisky, and I am curious to see how the industry will develop in the coming years, but that will have to wait for another time. But on to my whisky of the week, which is quite a favourite of mine, the Bushmills 16-year-old. I first enjoyed this whisky at a whisky fair in Stockholm, which is held on board a cruise ship as part of a lineup at a Bushmills plus cheese tasting. It was a great tasting and the fruity notes paired very well with tangy cheese. I particularly seem to find peach notes in this whisky, and it is a really delightful dram for those who prefer a fruit-forward character in their drams. And that was a Voices piece by Moa Reynolds. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 16th of March 2025, from the Politics section. Disgraced ex-Health Secretary Matheson to quit politics. By political editor Andrew Learmonth. Michael Matheson, the former SNP Health Secretary who became embroiled in a controversy over an £11,000 data roaming bill, has announced he will step down at the next election. In a post on social media, the Falkirk West MSP said he wanted to seek new challenges out with frontline politics. He said, "I have tonight advised my constituency association that I have decided not to seek re-election to the Scottish Parliament next year. As one of the original members of the Scottish Parliament elected in 1999, by the time of the election in 2026, I will have served as an MSP for 27 years. When I joined the SNP at 17 years of age, the re-establishment of a Scottish Parliament was still a distant prospect. I could never have imagined that I would have the privilege to represent Falkirk in our national parliament for over 2 decades." News of his decision comes just days after it emerged he had passed the SNP's internal vetting process to allow him to stand again. The MSP for Falkirk West resigned from the Cabinet in February 2024 after he came under scrutiny over a £10,935.74 data roaming bill run up in his parliamentary iPad. The Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body, SPCB, ruled that the disgraced ex-minister had twice breached the MP's code of conduct, upholding 3 complaints made against him. MSPs then voted to ban Matheson from Holyrood for 27 days and withdraw his wages for 54 days. After details of the bill first emerged, he initially agreed to pay £3,000 towards his taxpayer-funded expenses, with the Scottish Parliament picking up the rest. However, days later, after journalists and MSPs queried the charge, he agreed to pay the full amount from his own pocket. At first, he claimed the bill was the result of parliamentary work while on a family holiday in Morocco and a misunderstanding with a new SIM card. He then, in an emotional statement on November the 16th, 2023, told MSPs that he had discovered his sons had been watching football during the family trip. He said he had been told by his wife on November the 9th that the teenagers had used his parliamentary device as a Wi-Fi hotspot. However, on November 13th, when asked directly if there was any personal use of the device during the family holiday, he told reporters, no. It also emerged that he met up with parliamentary authorities, including Presiding Officer Alison Johnson, during that period, and did not tell them his boys were responsible for racking up the charges. In his statement, Mr Matheson said he was deeply grateful to have had the opportunity to serve in government and to implement policy in justice, health, transport and climate change that has made Scotland a better place for all. He added, I will of course continue to serve my constituents to the best of my ability for the remainder of my term, and I look forward to seeking new challenges out with frontline politics. I'm passing on the Falkirk West SNP torch. I look forward to supporting your candidate for next year's election to ensure Falkirk West returns an SNP MSP. Mr Matheson is the 21st SNP MSP to announce they will not contest the 2026 election, more than a third of John Swinney's Holyrood group. Nominations to stand as an SNP candidate in one of Holyrood's 73 constituencies open on Monday for 4 weeks. Local members will then have another month to hold hustings and select their candidate. Competition could be fierce for seats, with more than 150 people in the party's list of approved candidates. In Falkirk West, the SNP is defending a majority of 14,149, making it one of the party's safest seats. Possible candidates include Tony Giugliano, who stood in last year's general election. A swing of 26 points saw him lose his seat to Labour's Ewan Steenbank, who won the constituency with a majority of 4,996. In the week of the vote, Mr Giugliano said Mr Matheson's iPad scandal had played a part in his defeat. An SNP found to have breached rules and parliamentary expenses must never again be protected. Quite the opposite, they must be removed from office, he said. Other names on the list of candidates include sitting MPs Stephen Flynn, Stephen Gethins and Dave Duggan. Another 16 are former MPs, including 15 who lost their seats at last year's general election. They include Tommy Shepherd, Alison Thewlis, Alan Smith and Anne McLaughlin. And that article was written by Andrew Learmonth. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 16th of March 2025, from the business section, Business Week by Brian Donnelly. Drinks giant unlocks rare whisky collection in Scotland. A major whisky producer has launched a new visitor experience that offers access to rare, aged and ghost cask whiskies. The Whisky Treasure Trove also offers a £50,000 package deal that includes a hotel stay and Michelin star dining. It is part of an offering that owner Diageo said will bring bespoke blending, luxurious experiences and creative collaborations. The Johnny Walker Vault in the Scottish capital is described as the brand's most ambitious expression of blending artistry yet. It will also link with its first creative partner to co-create a limited edition collection later this year. Shares plunge in Tennent's owner amid hospitality pressure. Shares in the owner of Tennent's Lager plunged nearly 20% earlier this week after the company issued a profits warning, citing softer trading in January and February and additional pressure on the hospitality industry from economic pressures and tax hikes set to take effect in April. CNC Group declared it now expects to report underlying profits before interest and tax in the range of €76 million to €78 million, modestly below our target, as it told the city it expects to see continued uncertainty for consumers alongside the impact of the well-documented challenges facing the hospitality sector. However, the company, which also makes Magners Irish Cider, signalled his expectation of an improvement in profits in 2026 compared with the year to February 28, 2025. Analyst Greg Johnson at Shore Capital noted that while the company's profits expectations are slightly behind its estimate of €80 million, it is markedly ahead of the €60 million reported by the corresponding period last year. Scottish business eyes English Premier League growth. A three-dimensional design and printing startup based in Glasgow, which produces bespoke chess sets featuring Liverpool, Arsenal and Manchester United legends, is targeting major expansion. It flagged as an immediate priority the expansion of its presence in the English Premier League market and highlighted plans to win more industrial contracts. Founded by product design graduates and university friends Michael O'Donnell and Alex Duff, 3D Scotland is aiming for an annual turnover of £200,000 as it diversifies into new markets. The company has launched a string of new custom 3D modelling and printing services after enjoying success in producing bespoke, football-themed chess sets. Golf Club looks to a further six-fold surge in player numbers. Gifford Golf Club was established in 1904 as a nine-hole parkland course, blending challenging play with the natural beauty of the East Lothian countryside. Designed to be both challenging and accessible, it offers a variety of par 3 and par 4 holes, and one par 5, and can be played as an 18-hole round. The club has been shortlisted for the second year running in the 9-hole course category by the Scottish Tourism Awards, and currently has a 95% rating on Google reviews. Gifford also enjoyed a six-fold increase in the number of rounds played in 2024, following a campaign to raise the club's profile, bringing in both more visitors and additional members. As a result, Captain Peter Imrie says the club may be setting up a waiting list for the new members later this year. And that was the Business Week by Brian Donnelly.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 17th of March 2025. From the Voices section. A common sense solution at a Glasgow graveyard. Now let's do the rest. Article written by Mark Smith. Every night, at the same time, a man would wake his way up the spiral staircase, check it was 8:15 p.m, and ring the bell. The sound of the bell meant you had 15 minutes exactly to leave, because at 8:30 p.m, the great iron gates would be closed, and that was that. If you weren't out by that time, you were staying the night, and there aren't many people who want to stay the night in a cemetery. It's different now. The bell is gone, and the gatehouse that contained it is neglected and decayed. Not only is the roof in danger of collapse, the spiral staircase has rotted away, and there's a real concern the building might not last much longer. The iron gates are also gone, which means you can come and go as you please. Mostly it's the relatives of the dead who come, or locals who enjoy a huge green space in the middle of the Gaubles, but it can also bring trouble. The small team of volunteers at the southern necropolis do what they can. They've campaigned to raise money to save the gatehouse, which was designed by the same man who designed Park Circus, Charles Wilson. And when the vandals and troublemakers do strike, the volunteers move in and tidy up, pick up the litter and so on. One time, someone drove right into the graveyard, probably on a quad bike, and churned up the ground round Greek Thompson's grave. It can be depressing, this kind of thing, the lack of respect. There are similar problems in Glasgow's other cemeteries and graveyards: damage, troublemakers, vandals. But I'm pleased to say there are signs of hope. In the north of the city, at the great burial site that contains the Western Necropolis, St Kentigern's Roman Catholic Cemetery, and Lamb Hill Graveyard, incidents of trouble are down 73% in a year. In 2023, the police were called 38 times about the graveyard and attended 15 incidents. But in 2024, the police were called 10 times and attended 5 incidents. Why has this happened? Because there's been an outbreak of common sense, that's why. A year ago, Glasgow City Council decided to shut the gates at the entrance every night in an attempt to prevent trouble. It hasn't solved the problems completely. Since the new measures, there have still been incidents, including public nuisance, an abandoned vehicle, and a theft. But the trend is downwards, and on the whole the local community is pleased. Local councillor Robert Mooney says it gives people peace of mind to know their loved ones' graves won't be damaged or disrespected. The peace of mind is not total, though, and the culprits aren't always the local Neds. You may remember the stooshy last year when Glasgow City Council started slapping stickers on certain gravestones headed "Warning, This memorial has failed to meet safety standards. The council said it was doing it because it had a statutory duty to ensure headstones were safe, but that maintenance was a matter for the owners, usually relatives. Applying the notices to the stones, said the council, was an effective way to find the relatives and get the repairs done. Most other people said it was disrespectful. Both stories, the gates being shut at Lamb Hill and the stickers being slapped on stones deemed unsafe, help to demonstrate what's going on here, the slow neglect of graveyards. I've been in lots of them over the years, doing various stories, and it's always moving. I was in Old Monkland Cemetery when work began to exhume a site they thought might contain the body of missing Moira Anderson. I was in Ardrossan when they were looking for the bodies of the victims of the HMS Dasher disaster. And I was in Sight Hill Graveyard to see stones finally being erected on the unmarked graves of soldiers. As I say, it's always moving, but it can be depressing as well to see how far many of our cemeteries have been allowed to decline. Perhaps some of it is an inevitable consequence of secularisation. If the importance of the church has declined in our lives and our deaths, then so will the importance of our graveyards. But graveyards and cemeteries are for the alive as well as the dead. The team at the Southern Necropolis, for example, put on music events and yoga and lots of other stuff. In some parts of the country, a graveyard can also be the only sizable green space that's available to walk or relax or exercise the dog. That's why it was mind-boggling to see the suggestion in Edinburgh last year that dogs should be banned from cemeteries, in the city of Greyfriars Bobby. Wisely, the council rejected the idea. The question is, what can we do if many graveyards are being neglected and are in decline, which they are? The Scottish Government recently ran a consultation on the management of graveyards, and we're yet to see how they will officially respond to it, but the noises are not encouraging. There's a suggestion, for example, that the in perpetuity right to layers will be replaced with a single generation of 25 years, which is no time at all. Many families, including my own, visit graves for far longer than that. The possible changes to the powers of local authorities are also worrying. The government's stated aim is to modernise, always a dangerous word, the legislation that covers burial. This could mean granting a local authority powers to carry out any activities they deem necessary, which sounds like the sort of vague legal language that's got us into trouble in the past. Whatever was done would be hard to oppose or prevent because it was deemed necessary. What's actually needed is better management of graveyards overall. Sadly, we're not going back to the days when a man in a uniform would climb to the top of a tower, ring a bell and make sure the gates were closed every night. But making sure the gates are locked is an effective and inexpensive deterrent, and what's been happening up at Lamb Hill Cemetery proves that it works. There are other effective steps we could take. For instance, while Glasgow Council has been slapping stickers around their cemeteries, Edinburgh Council has embraced the idea of rebuilding and restabilising their gravestones through the Community Payback programme. They've trained staff to supervise, but most of the work is done by people serving a community sentence, so the cost is minimal, just the materials basically, some concrete, steel rods and so on. Hundreds of stones have been rebuilt or strengthened in this way for very little cost. If we're honest, it's solutions like that, Community Payback, that'll work best here, because governments aren't about to spend lots of money on graveyards. The dead don't have votes. But a balance has to be struck between requiring councils to take reasonable steps to protect cemeteries, lock the gates, and protecting graveyards from inappropriate decisions. Giving councils the power to do whatever they deem necessary will make things worse. What will make things better is requiring them to come up with a plan to maintain graveyards to a reasonable standard, a plan that works, a plan that doesn't cost too much, and a plan that's decent. That article was written by Mark Smith and read to you by Elizabeth.
From the National, Monday the 17th of March, from the news section. CalMac contract given to Polish firm and snubbed Ferguson Marine, by political reporter James Walker. A CalMac contract to build 7 new small electric ferries is set to be awarded to Polish firm Remontowa Shipbuilding. The £170 million programme, which was seeking to build vessels to Scotland's less populated islands, saw a number of firms bid, including the troubled Scottish firm Ferguson Marine, which has been at the centre of an ongoing political storm since its nationalisation in 2019. But CalMac has now announced that it intends to award the contract to the Gdansk-based company instead. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sauer hit out at the decision, saying it was a huge blow to Scottish shipbuilding. Once again, jobs and investment going abroad on the SNP's watch, he added. The programme is looking to improve the resilience of the Clyde and Hebrides ferry network, with delivery of the first vessel expected in 2027. Transport Secretary Fiona Hislop said, "I welcome this milestone being reached in the procurement to build and deliver 7 new small vessels to our ferry network. These 7 new vessels will improve connectivity and resilience for island residents, businesses and communities, and their electric operation will contribute to reduced carbon emissions from Scotland's ferry fleet and make ferry travel more sustainable. I appreciate all the work that's gone into getting us to this important stage of the procurement process, particularly CMAL. I am hopeful that we can look forward to contracts being signed at the end of the required standstill period." Kevin Hobbs, Chief Executive of CMAL, said, "It's our responsibility to follow the public procurement strategy for Scotland and appoint a yard capable of producing quality vessels which meet the needs of islanders, but that also deliver the best value for the public purse. We are confident in our Motova's ability, and I've worked with them before, most recently with the delivery of the MV Finnlager in 2011. We will now enter a 10-day standstill period before finalising the contract." An article written by James Walker and read by Ian McKenna. From the National, Monday the 17th of March 2025. From the news section, 4-year-old Scot given award for 999 call that saved mum's life, by Lucy Garcia. A brave 4-year-old boy who was called to emergency services when his mum had a medical emergency has been given an award by the Scottish Ambulance Service. Joshua Miller, from Ayr, was at home with his mum, Katie, 35, when she experienced an asthma attack 2 days before Hogmanay last year. With his mum unable to speak and his younger sister Abby, 3, at home, Joshua decided to dial 999. The Scottish Ambulance Service has given the youngster a certificate of commendation for his actions. Katie said, "Joshua took control straight away and knew what to do. It did take him a few moments to get his confidence, but once he had it, he was amazing. There are not enough words to describe how proud we are of him, and we have been enjoying, with family and friends, celebrating what he did that day." He also got a certificate from nursery, as well, for his braveness. He probably doesn't realise what he has done or how big it is, but we will continue to celebrate as he gets older. After the coup provided treatment at home, Katie was transported to Ayr Hospital and discharged for the following day, December the 30th, 2024. Kyle, one of the paramedics who attended the scene, said, "Both Joshua and Abby were brilliant on the day, keeping nice and calm when arrived. It was lovely to see the family again in better circumstances, and to show the family around Ayr Station, where both fellow paramedic Marta and I were more than happy to present Joshua with his certificate in recognition of his bravery. It's important children understand how to call for help and what emergency services is needed. Joshua knew who was needed and did an outstanding job." And the article was written by Lucy Garcia and read by Ian.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 17th of March 2025. From the Voices section. A future best friend. How a robot guide dog can improve lives. Article written by Wasim Ahmad. Humans have been inventing assistive technologies to help each other enjoy a better quality of life for thousands of years. There's evidence that crutches and walking sticks were used in ancient Egypt, for example. The Romans developed basic prosthetics for amputees. The first eyeglasses were made in the 13th century. Braille and wheelchairs emerged in the 19th century, and hearing aids early in the 20th. Today, digital technologies are enabling researchers around the world develop new ways to support people living with disabilities at a remarkable pace. 2 million people live with sight loss in the UK. In recent years, technology has helped many of them through new developments like smartphone apps, which can read text or describe their surroundings with remarkable accuracy. Here at the University of Glasgow's James Watt School of Engineering, we've partnered with RNIB Scotland and the Forth Valley Sensory Centre, FVSC, to develop the Robo Guide, a talking, self-navigating robotic guide dog to help support blind and partially sighted people. This week, we'll be showcasing the development of Robo Guide at RNIB Scotland's Inclusive Design for Sustainability conference, as part of a wider discussion about how technology can help people live more independent lives. We don't want to replace flesh and blood dogs as the primary assistance for blind and partially sighted people. The companionship that animals provide can't be replicated by silicon and servos, and we wouldn't want to try. Instead, we're aiming to provide people with opportunities to experience the world around them in new, more richly textured ways, enabled by cutting-edge technologies. RoboGuide has cameras and sensors to understand and navigate the world around it, and integrated voice synthesis linked to conversational artificial intelligence to allow it to have conversations with people on a wide variety of topics. That could help make supermarket trips for blind and partially sighted people simpler by having RoboGuide find specific items in the aisles, read ingredient lists on demand, or answer questions. It could enhance a visit to a museum by having a RoboGuide read the text accompanying a piece on display, or chat with users about a historical exhibit by drawing on knowledge seamlessly accessed from a trusted source on the internet. The key aspect of our work on the RoboGuide is that we're developing it in partnership with blind and partially sighted people. Volunteers from RNIB Scotland and FVSC have been working with us since the start of the project to provide guidance on how we can design the best possible robot guide dog. They've also been helping us test prototype RoboGuide in real-world situations to ensure that it meets their needs. Putting users at the heart of design is the key to success, and we're thrilled with the positive feedback on the development of RoboGuide we've received so far. We hope that RoboGuides will become widely available to help people find their way around and enjoy more independent experiences away from home. It might not be too long before you hear the pitter-patter of robot paws in a public space near you. Dr. Wasim Ahmad is a senior lecturer at the University of Glasgow's James Watt School of Engineering. The article was read to you by Elizabeth.
From the National, Monday the 17th of March, from the news section, teen arrested after Aberdeen mosque targeted in hate crime. Article written by Xander Elliards. A teenager has been arrested and charged in connection with a hate crime which saw a Scottish mosque targeted. The Aberdeen Mosque and Islamic Centre, AMIC, Spittal Mosque had a window smashed while worshippers were inside on Saturday evening, and the building was also vandalised with paint. While local members of the community turned out to help with the clean-up, Aberdeen City Councillor Nurul Haq Ali warned that Islamophobia is on the rise in our tolerant and peaceful city. After the incidents on Saturday evening, AMIC said, "The willful and despicable criminal acts have been reported to the police, and they are investigating the source of the attacks." It added, "Meanwhile, the mosque in Aberdeen would like to assure all members of the community that in light of these incidents, all the mosques are taking additional security measures as well as being assured of support from the police. The police will be performing additional patrols around the mosques during prayer and at other busy times." In their statement on the incident, police said that a 17-year-old boy had been arrested and charged. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, "Following an investigation into reports of vandalism at a mosque in Spittal, Aberdeen, officers have arrested and charged a 17-year-old male. The incident occurred on Saturday 15th of March 2025. Police are treating the incident as a hate crime. The male has been released on an undertaking and will appear at court at a later date." An article written by Xander Elliards and read by Ian McKenna.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 17th of March 2025. From the Voices section. Why do workers pay the price for management failings? Article written by Ros Foyer, STUC General Secretary. Dundee. It's a city that's had to remodel and rediscover itself several times. It is, after all, the city of discovery. It's a city steeped in trade union heritage, political activism, and international solidarity. It was the first city ever to be twinned with a Palestinian city, being twinned with Nablus 45 years ago. It's a city that gave Churchill the boot. It's a community that rallied around the workers of the Timex factory. It's the people who reclaim the city square at the Caird Hall for every cause and demonstration they seek to support, ourselves included. It's a regular site for our annual Congress, the biggest gathering of trade unionists in Scotland. It's a city of art, as the renowned Dundee School of Art celebrates nearly 140 years in the city. More recently, it's become the hub of technological, scientific and medical brilliance at the city's two universities. Both Abertay and Dundee University welcome students from across the world to study at their institution. We should be proud of that. Without the same resources, infrastructure, or frankly funding as Scotland's metropolitans, Dundee rediscovered itself as a centre for learning and educational excellence. All of that is now at risk. Dundee University has announced a range of devastating cuts to their academic and non-academic staff. Over 632 members of staff are at risk of being thrown onto the scrap heap as management scramble to fix their own failings. Workers who aren't responsible for the mess Dundee University find themselves in, with management aware of the financial precarity of their institution well before now, must now carry the can. Why should they? Those who presided over this debacle have been allowed to resign and scoot off without repercussions. The news was dropped as members of the University and College Union, UCU, ended 15 days of continuous strike action in protest at the scale of the university's deficit. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Workers don't take strike action lightly. Imagine just for a second it was your job, your future on the chopping block. Would you stand up for it, or just try and keep the head down and ride it out? UCU won't stand for it, and neither will Unite nor Unison. This is an institution in crisis that must overcome a £30 million deficit. It wasn't the lecturers or the academic assistants that ran up that bill. It was gross mismanagement from senior staff, with some splurging £7,000 on a junket to Hong Kong. Why is it then, time after time, it is staff who pay the price for the mistakes of those above them in the occupational food chain? Management have pledged to launch an external investigation into how the deficit was so enlarged, but that will be cold comfort, if not a complete slap in the face, to the workers now facing unemployment because of management gross negligence. Over 600 jobs, that's 20% of the workforce. The population equivalent of the entire village of Inverary being handed their redundancy notices and discarded. Every union involved in this dispute has rightly pledged to fight for every single job. In the here and now, we need emergency investment from government to fix the failures of university management and prevent these cuts. But our gaze must be wider. This is an institution in crisis within a sector that's in grave peril. Dundee is just the tip of the iceberg. The University of Edinburgh has recently announced plans to inflict scything cuts of £140 million. Strathclyde University workers within Unite the Union are currently on strike defending their pensions from attacks by their employer. That's in addition to other institutions, Glasgow, Robert Gordon and more, planning on cutting their payroll. This isn't just jobs on the line, it's the economic vitality of our communities within these towns and cities. Dundee has rediscovered its joie de vivre as a thriving city that welcomes students from across the UK and internationally. How can we ever hope to hold on to them, to use and harness their talents to help plug our ever-growing skills gap, if the institutions that educate them are cut time after time? It's inconceivable that these cuts won't have knock-on impacts on the wider economy. Jobs in hospitality, retail, housing will all be lost if they continue to cut jobs and lower the standards of our institutions. Of course, years of underfunding has increased reliance on overseas students, but a hostile and aggressive Tory approach to immigration has hardly rolled out the Welcome Act to those students seeking to broaden their minds and horizons within our institutions. The easy, incorrect and highly politicised answer that we're already hearing from some quarters is that the policy of free university tuition for Scottish students must end. It shouldn't. It's far more nuanced and pointing the finger at students, many of whom wouldn't dare of dreaming to walk the halls of some of our most ancient and prestigious universities if they were saddled with £60,000 of debt by the end of it, is not the solution. The answer lies in fully funding the sector. We cannot continue to rely on an increasingly marketised model overly dependent on overseas students. We need to recognise education for what it is, a critical part of Scotland's economy, both locally and nationally, which provides people with the skills to succeed in their life and in their work. Whilst it was welcome to hear the First Minister express his concern for the plight of Dundee University, government cannot just keep putting sticking plasters on gaping wounds. They must get ahead of the game and give institutions the resources and funding they need to survive. They must also democratise university governance. We cannot allow such a crucial public service to be run as the plaything of a few senior managers, unaccountable to staff, students or broader society. Now is the time for bravery. If our further and higher education sectors don't have the funding to survive, government must ensure they're using the full swathe of powers open to them to secure that funding. If the City of Discovery is to find itself again, then simply put, Dundee University must endure. Ros Foyer is General Secretary of the STUC. The article was read to you by Elizabeth.
From the Herald Scotland, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the sports section. Daisen Maeda a major Japan doubt after Celtic vs Rangers. Report by Mark Walker. Celtic talisman Daisen Maeda is a doubt for Japan's World Cup party this week after picking up a knock in their derby defeat to Rangers. The 27-year-old netted his 29th goal of the season for club and country in the weekend loss at Parkhead to Rangers. He is also a key player now for Japan, who could become the first nation to qualify for the 2026 World Cup if they defeat Bahrain at Saitama Stadium after surging 9 points clear of Australia after just 6 games in their group. However, Maeda didn't train with the squad and went through his own personal routine and is rated as a doubt for the game. The Japanese FA stated, Daisen Maeda did not train with the main group after suffering from a bruised leg and undertook his own individual programme. He will be assessed before the game. Maeda is looking for his 5th goal for Japan in what will be his 23rd cap if he makes it. And that report was written by Mark Walker and read by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the sports section. McIlroy believes best golf yet to come after Players' Championship win. Article written by Martin McMillan. Rory McIlroy believes the best golf of his career is yet to come after he celebrated St Patrick's Day by defeating JJ Spaun in a playoff to win a second Players' Championship title. McIlroy covered the 3 extra holes and 1 over par, but it was comfortably enough to beat Spaun in a somewhat anticlimactic finish at TPC Sawgrass. A 2-putt birdie in the par 5 16 gave McIlroy a 1-shot advantage after Spaun could only make a par after finding rough off the tee and a bunker with his approach. McIlroy then safely found the green in the treacherous 17th before Spaun, who looked unsure of his club selection in the windy conditions, flew his tee shot over the green into the water. The resulting triple bogey effectively ended the Americans' chances of a second PGA Tour victory, even though McIlroy surprisingly 3-putted from 30 feet. McIlroy also bogeyed the 18th, but Spaun still had 10 feet left for his own bogey, and did not complete the hole after McIlroy tapped in to seal a 28th PGA Tour title. I feel bad for JJ. He hit a really good shot in 17 and it just went straight through the wind. I was lucky to do enough to get it done, McIlroy said. I'm unbelievably proud and happy to win my 2nd Players' Championship. This is the 3rd time I've won on St Patrick's Day, so it's been a good luck charm for me. Watching Scotty Scheffler go 2 in a row last year was unbelievably impressive, and I think the only multiple major champions and multiple Players' Champions are Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods and Scotty and myself, so it's a pretty nice group to be a part of. I feel like I'm a better player now than I have ever been, and it's nice to see the fruits of my labour paying off. The younger guys coming out are getting better every single year, and I need to keep working hard to hang with them. I'm doing a pretty good job of that. I feel like I've still got a few years left in the tank. Following his victory at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am in February, McIlroy has now won twice on the PGA Tour before the Masters for the first time in his career. The world number 2 needs a victory in the year's first major championship at Augusta National to complete a career Grand Slam. Asked if his best golf could be yet to come, McIlroy told Sky Sports, "Absolutely. I don't think I should be out here if I didn't believe my best golf was in front of me. I want to try to keep improving and getting better, and it's the reason that, after 16 or 17 years out there, I'm still doing it." McIlroy had started Sunday's final round 4 shots behind overnight leader Spawn, but carded a closing 68 to Spawn's 72, on a day interrupted by a 4-hour delay due to bad weather. And that report was written by Martin McMillan. From the Herald Scotland, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the sports section. Ref and VAR officials named for Greece vs Scotland in Nations League. Article written by David Irvin. UEFA have confirmed the refereeing team for the Nations League match between Greece and Scotland. The sides face off in the Nations League A/B playoffs with the first leg of the tie in Piraeus, Greece, on Thursday, March the 20th. Kick-off on Thursday is at 7:45, with the match being shown free to air on BBC. UEFA have announced a German officiating team will oversee proceedings. Tobias Steiler has been named as the referee, with Christian Gittelmann and Mark Borch as his assistant referees. Martin Pettersson is the 4th official. VAR will be in use in the Nations League match, with Soren Storks in the booth, where he will be assisted by Benjamin Cortes. Ref Steiler, 43, has taken charge of 3 matches involving the Scotland national team in the past. He was the man in the middle for friendly defeats to Costa Rica at Hampden in 2018, 0-1, and France at the Decathlon Arabia Stade Pierre Mauroy, 4-1 in 2023. The only competitive match Steiler has officiated involving Scotland was a 1-1 draw with Lithuania in 2016. James MacArthur scored an 89th minute equaliser that day. An article was written by David Irvin and read by E. McKenna.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday the 18th of March 2025 from the Voices section. Big week for pair prominent in Scottish independence vote. This article is by Ian McConnell. It has been a big week for 2 very high-profile figures who featured prominently, in quite different ways, in the referendum on Scottish independence in 2014. Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who played a leading role in the 2014 independence campaign, announced on Wednesday that she would not be standing for re-election to the Scottish Parliament in 2026. Meanwhile, Mark Carney, who in September 2014, just ahead of the independence referendum, found himself in the thick of a highly charged debate as he offered forthright views on the big currency question, amongst other things, on March the 9th, celebrated a landslide victory in the battle to become Canada's Prime Minister. Former Bank of England Governor Mr. Carney, after winning the race to lead the Liberal Party of Canada and succeed Justin Trudeau as the country's Prime Minister, wasted no time in standing up to Donald Trump on the US President's trade war. He is surely someone that Mr. Trump should not think of trifling with. Mr. Carney, referring to the Trump administration, talked about dark days brought on by a country we can no longer trust. He said, Donald Trump, as we know, has put unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He is attacking Canadian families, workers and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed, and we won't. I am proud. I am proud of the response of Canadians who are making their voices heard and their wallets felt. I am grateful for how our provinces are stepping up to the fight. Because when we are united, we are Canada strong. Canada America is not Canada, and Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape or form. Mr. Carney added, "Look, we didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake. In trade, as in hockey, Canada will win." An election in Canada must be held by October 20th. There has been talk Mr. Carney could call an election in the coming weeks, a signal this could take place well in advance of the deadline. The Canadian Conservatives' lead over the Liberals has narrowed sharply recently, and Mr. Carney's victory in the leadership contest is expected by some experts to provide a further boost to the Liberal Party. One thing is for sure, we are going to be hearing a lot more about Mr. Carney on this side of the Atlantic in the coming weeks and months. As the former Bank of England governor takes centre stage, Miss Sturgeon prepares to bow out as an MSP next year. My analysis in the Herald last week of Miss Sturgeon's time in charge from a business and economic perspective observed, by the time Nicola Sturgeon departed as First Minister in March 2023, the relationship between the Scottish Government and business had, to put it mildly, become strained. There is no doubt much of this tension built up during the years of the coronavirus pandemic. However, it added, Miss Sturgeon's administration steered a steady, pragmatic course on business and the economy, and probably deserved more credit for policy making on this front than it received. It continued with the small business bonus scheme. This provides crucial relief on business rates to many small businesses. The Scottish Government's work on the economic development front generally looked to deliver good results. Under Miss Sturgeon, who became First Minister in November 2014, Scotland continued to enjoy very considerable success in attracting foreign direct investment. This could be viewed as the best measure of Scotland as a place to do business. And the analysis concluded, the nation continues to enjoy great success on inward investment, and its long period of strong performance on this front would suggest much of the mudslinging at the Scottish Government on business and the economy during Miss Sturgeon's time as First Minister and since is unwarranted. Ros Foyer, General Secretary of the Scottish Trades Union Congress, had some warm words about Miss Sturgeon in the immediate wake of the news that the former First Minister would not be standing for re-election as an MSP next year. Miss Foyer said, "The STUC wished to thank Nicola for her long-standing public service to our Parliament, our politics and the wider social fabric of Scotland. Throughout her time as an MSP and as First Minister, she consistently strived to work in partnership with our movement, even when we robustly disagreed, showing the STUC and the wider trade union movement nothing but the high-level respect and courtesy we are due as representatives of Scotland's workers. She was a leading proponent of the Scottish Government's Fair Work agenda, recognising that more needed to be done to protect workers. Her commitment to ending poverty and driving down inequality throughout her career as an MSP should also be recognised. It would surely be difficult to disagree with any of that. And we should never lose sight of the enormous benefits for the economy, as well as, of course, for society, of fair work and tackling poverty and inequality. If anyone disagrees with that, they should reflect on the extent to which worries about in-work poverty can diminish employees' productivity. And people who are paid a decent wage or salary will have a greater ability to buy goods and services from businesses than those who are not. It is important, when considering the long-term good of the economy, to look at the big picture. That article was by Ian McConnell. This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday, the 18th of March, 2025, from the business section. Let the Ceilidh carry on. Glasgow Gaelic bar changes hands. This article is by Gabriel Mackay. A famous Gaelic bar in Glasgow has officially changed hands after more than 30 years. The Park Bar on Argyle Street in the city went on the market in July 2024 after leaseholder Nina Steele opted to step down following over 3 decades at the helm. The pub was sold to English-based Trust Inns, which owns 350 bars around the UK, by Dundas Heritable in December of 2023. The Glasgow institution will now be run by Deirdre and Gary Curley. A post on the Park Bar's Facebook page said, "Today was the day Nina officially passed on the stewardship of the Park Bar to Deirdre and Gary Curley, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new one. Nina has proudly continued Terry Ferguson's legacy and expresses confidence that Deirdre and Gary will carry it forward successfully. Nina, Alan and Winnie also take a moment to thank all the loyal customers, staff and musicians who have supported the Park Bar throughout the years, helping to shape it into what it is today." There has been a pub on the site of the current Park Bar since 1873, with Gaelic music first coming to the bar in the 1960s. It became a haven for the city's Highland and Island community, with 16,000 Gaelic speakers in Partick alone at the time. Singer Donald McRae said in 2020, "Between 1966 and 1996, it was hard to get a seat in the Park Bar unless someone died and left their seat to you."
Herald on the 18th of March, and the news section. Deaths of 3 newborn babies could have been avoided. And this is by Nick Forbes. The deaths of 3 newborn babies could have been avoided if reasonable precautions had been taken, a fatal accident inquiry has found. The inquiry was launched after the deaths in 2 Lanarkshire hospitals of Leo Lamont, Ellie McCormack and Myra Bell Bosch within hours of their births. Leo was 2 hours old when he died at University Hospital Monklands on February 15, 2019, and Ellie was 5 hours old when she died at Wishaw General Hospital, Lanarkshire, on March 5 the same year. Myra Bell was aged 12 hours and 1 minute when she died on July 2, 2021 at Wishaw General Hospital. In her report, Sheriff Principal Aisha Answar KC said reasonable precautions could have been taken that might realistically have saved each baby's life. In each case, the baby's mother has been in contact with the hospital in the hours before giving birth, but had been advised to stay at home rather than go in for an assessment. The report also highlighted defects in systems of working in the hospitals, pointing to a lack of guidance for midwives in assessing preterm labour symptoms and a lack of effective means of flagging pregnant women's risk on hospital systems. It also flagged issues with the interpretation of guidance around when to induce labour after women's waters have broken. Leo's mother, Nadine Rooney, had a history of preterm delivery and had reported episodes of bleeding during her pregnancy. She was 27 weeks into her pregnancy when she called Princess Royal Maternity Hospital in Glasgow at 3:17 a.m. on February 15, complaining of agony pains in her back. The midwife advised her to take painkillers and just call back if the pain did not improve, and she gave birth to Leo on her bedroom floor just before 5 a.m. Mother and child were rushed to University Hospital Monklands, but Leo was pronounced dead at 7:10 a.m. having suffered from a shortage of oxygen during and shortly after labour. Ellie's mother, Nicola, had also reported episodes of bleeding during her pregnancy, but her observations had been considered normal. She called the maternity unit at about 4:30 p.m. on March 4, 2019 to report that she was experiencing contractions and was advised to take painkillers and have a bath or shower and call back if she was not coping. When she called again at about 7:30 p.m, she was advised to go in and her baby's heartbeat was found to be slow, so medics carried out an emergency caesarean section. After being delivered, Ellie was in poor condition and there were no signs of life, and she was pronounced dead at 2:20 a.m, having suffered a brain injury due to lack of oxygen during labour. According to the report, Myra Bell's mother, Roselle's pregnancy had gone smoothly. She called the maternity ward at Wishaw General Hospital at about 8:50 p.m. on June 30, 2021, reporting that her waters had broken and she was experiencing contractions. She went in for an assessment but was discharged and called the unit again at about 2:30 p.m. on July 1 and was advised to remain at home. About 8 hours later, her partner called for an ambulance reporting that the baby was being born feet first. When paramedics arrived, they tried phoning the maternity unit for advice and had to call 5 times before they could get through. After they attempted to deliver the baby in situ, Mrs. Bosch was rushed to hospital where Myra Bell was delivered but found to be unresponsive. She was pronounced dead at 12:30 p.m. on July 2, having suffered a brain injury due to lack of oxygen. In her report, Ms. Anwar offered condolences to the bereaved parents who she said had given evidence with great dignity during the inquiry. The death of a child is an unimaginable and deeply painful event in any parent's life, one from which it's undoubtedly difficult to recover, she said. What ought to have been a time of celebration for the parents and families who awaited the births of Leo, Ellie and Myra Bell turned to one of sorrow and tragedy. The report makes 11 recommendations, including the drawing up of a trigger list for identifying preterm labour symptoms and the introduction of a dedicated telephone line to give ambulance service staff direct access to maternity units. It also recommends that women are given an approximate time frame in which to call back when told to see if symptoms improve after taking painkillers, as well as recommending improvements in the way information is recorded on hospital systems. That was by Nick Forbes.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, rate, review, and tell your friends about our service.